Welcome to another episode of 40 Minutes in the Old Testament. 40 Minutes in the Old Testament is a 1517 Podcast Network podcast. You can go to 1517.org/podcast and check out all the other podcasts that are living over there. While you're over there, make sure you check out everything else that 1517 is doing, all the articles, all the videos, all the academies that you can sign up for free to watch. You can learn about all kinds of things. We got a lot of academies now, Chad, so we're covering a lot of stuff. And if you've never went over to the academies page and checked out what we're offering over there, you should do so. Also, hey, have you ordered Chad Bird's book? Have you ordered the new book? I mean, you can pre-order it right now. I mean, he's holding it up right there. Hitchhiking with Prophets by Chad Bird. There's a link for that in the show notes. Make sure that you pre-order that so that you can get your hands on a copy as soon as it comes out. You're going to want to do that. Because, we haven't got to the prophets yet, so you get to get a little sneak peek. It's like if you're a listener to the podcast, you get to go jump probably years ahead, Chad, years ahead, and see what Chad has to say about the prophets. So make sure you do that. Chad, we are still in Job. The Lord is speaking. We are in Job 38 at the end of it. We were just discussing how the chapter break here is weird. This probably feels like it should be the start of 39. But nonetheless, it's the last three verses of 38 as the Lord he's asking Job a lot of questions that Job knows the answer to, so the Lord's not kind of waiting for a response. They're kind of rhetorical questions here.
Yeah, long list of rhetorical questions. No. Pretty much could be Job's response, but as we'll see, he's gonna maintain his silence at least for a while. So, yeah, in that opening section, had a lot of talk about just kind of creation in general, storehouses of snow, wind, rain, constellations, all kind of things that God is questioning Job about. Do you know this? Do you know that? And then he's going to shift really for the remainder of his speeches, two speeches, but for the remainder of what God has to say to Job, outside of some like very direct questions to Job with regard to him trying to annul God's world order. Besides that, he's going to talk about animals. So I didn't count them up, but I think around 8 animals he's going to talk about in this coming section. Everything from lions to mountain goats to wild oxen to horses. And then when he finishes that, Job is going to have something to say, just briefly. And then God's going to shift again to talk about, some other things. We'll get there. How, if Job can bring judgment on the wicked. And then we'll have these two very, very well-known sections at the very end where you have 2 animals discussed, Behemoth and Leviathan. So we will get to those. But first of all, beginning here at the end of chapter 38, he shifts to the animal world. So I'll read just those last 3 verses of Job 38. Can you hunt the prey for the lion or satisfy the appetite of the young lions when they crouch in their dens or lie in wait in their thicket? Who provides for the raven its prey when its young ones cry to God for help and wander about for lack of food? So 2 animals so far. We got the lion with her cubs. They're crouching in their dens. They're in their thicket. And then you have the ravens also. Interesting. I just noticed this morning. This hadn't caught my eye until I was going back over the section this morning. But very often in these parts where God's talking to the animals, he talks about not just the animals but their young. There's a kind of a back and forth here. So he'll talk about the adult lions or oxen or whatever it might be, or the ostrich you'll get to in just a second. But then he also accents the gestation period or how they care for their young or things like that. And I suppose this is God's way of speaking in an all-encompassing sort of way, not just the animals, but what they eat, how they care for their young. Do you know all of these things, Job? So can you, I love the way he begins. Job, can you hunt the prey for the lion or satisfy the appetite of the young lions? That you just kind of pause and think about that. Like, wait, that doesn't make sense. Shouldn't it say something like, can you explain how the lion hunts her prey, right?
Yeah.
But instead, this is like God telling Job, hey, are you out there hunting for the lion like I do?
Yeah, it is a weird thing because, like, you could answer back, like, wait, who hunts the for food for young animals. Like, okay,
I thought, yeah,
the parent animals like do, I suppose.
yeah, isn't
And
that the way this works?
yeah, God instead is saying that I'm responsible for that.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, this it's a theme that you see in the Psalms as well. So a parallel here is Psalm 147, verse 9, which is talking about God. It says, He gives to the beasts their food, and He gives to the young ravens that cry. So this is a biblical theme that, on our sensory level, if we're just watching, maybe we're watching it, live, or on a safari or something, or we're watching on TVs, or we're scrolling through social media and some clip comes up and we see, there's a lion hunting its prey. That's what we see. Of course, that's just the way this works, right? But from God's perspective, he's like, no, no, I'm providing the food for these animals.
Right.
I'm hunting for them. I'm giving the raven its prey. And there's this picture of the young ravens crying to God for help. So this is I love sections like this because, we're in such a scientific age and we like to base all of our knowledge upon, discovery and research and all these sorts of things, which is fine. But from biblical perspective, God is the one who provides all this food. He's feeding the animals. He's taking care of us for sure. I mean, we pray that in the Lord's Prayer, give us this day our daily bread. But there is a sense in which all the animals have their own Lord's Prayer, in which they're saying to the Lord, give us this day our daily gazelle or something like that. Give us our food, O Lord, because God is doing that. So they're crying out to God for food, and He is taking care of even the young ravens or the lions that are prowling about looking for their food.
Yeah, well, you kind of get to make this claim if you're the one that created everything. So if you
Yeah,
created the predator and the prey, I suppose you could just take responsibility for that. Like you're like, yeah, that's the way I set it up.
yeah, yeah. So this is God saying, listen, I made all this, and I'm still taking care of it. I didn't just I'm not the deist God who made the universe, wound it up like a clock, and stepped back and let it run. I'm still intimately involved in all these various aspects of creation, all the way down to putting food inside the young ravens when they're crying for help. So that's the end of 38. And then, as we mentioned, that really should have been the beginning of chapter 39, but for whatever reason, that got put in the wrong place. So now, Job 39. I'll read these first four verses. Do you know when the mountain goats give birth? Do you observe the calving of the does? Can you number the months that they fulfill? And do you know the time when they give birth? When they crouch, bring forth their offspring, and are delivered of their young. Their young ones become strong. They grow up in the open. They go out and do not return to them. So you may have picked up on the fact that so far we're talking about wild animals. So we got the ravens, we got the lions, and here we have the mountain goats. These aren't goats that you would have in your herd that you're taking care of if you're a goat herd. These are the wild goats, and we'll see the same theme in the rest of these animals as well. The only one that's different is when we get to the end, where you have the horse. But as we'll see, even there, the horse, as it's described, is he's a domesticated animal, but not super domesticated because as the war horse will be described, you'll see that he acts pretty wild still. But here we have the mountain goats, and this is more of a focus. You have the young included here, but this is more a focus upon the intricacies of the gestation period and the birthing process and all that kind of stuff here. So it's a little bit of a shift. He's not talking so much about are you the one who feeds these animals, Job? This is more of, hey, these wild animals, do you know the details of how they produce their young? Can you point to a gestation period? Are you there when these animals are born? And of course, implication of the answer is no. God knows though. He's the one who created these animals. He placed within them their natural instincts. He placed within them all the biological realities that are part of conception and giving birth and all of these things that Job is not privy to. And of course, the import of all of this speech of God is basically telling Job, listen, uh, I'm God. I set up this world, all the way down to these animals that are out in the wild. So if I set everything up and I created the animal world, if this part of creation is something I know and you don't know, Job, just imagine how much you don't know.
Yeah.
Just imagine the amount of knowledge that you don't have because you're not me. And therefore, if you can't even understand, it's a kind of an argument from lesser to greater. So if you can't understand this, if you're lacking in knowledge with regard to these particulars of the animal world, just stop and try and fathom all the things that you don't know. In fact, all the things you don't even know that you don't know. And then you'll have an inkling at least how of how much there is about our world that you don't and cannot understand.
Yeah, I mean, the implication here is, I mean, think about this. How many animals are being born right now all over the world? I mean, I don't know how many, but I'm sure it's a lot. I mean, there's babies being born right now. Now, there's a lot of animals out there. Animals are having children, young ones, uh, all the time. And the implication here is God's like, I know about all of them. You know
I
about
know all the
none of
birthdays.
them. I know about all of them, right? So
Yeah.
there's no goat on a mountain somewhere giving birth that God doesn't know about. I mean, and so
Yeah.
yeah, when you think about it like that, I mean, that's an insane thing to think about. Like I don't know, there's a squirrel and a llama and a goat and a horse and a whale, and they're all giving birth at the same time, and God knows about all of it, and you know about none of it. And so this show is there to show you like the vast difference between your knowledge.
Yeah. It's kind of funny that this is the way that God chose to speak to Job. I mean, there's any number of things, right, that he could have used in his argument to demonstrate to Job the things he doesn't know. But instead, throughout this whole section, he really is mainly focusing upon the animals.
Well,
And
this
maybe
is
that's
well,
because
it's
I mean
such
it's
an
something we can all relate to.
yeah, it's such an earthy thing because like you could know about an animal giving birth. Like you might know if your dog gives birth to a litter because you're there and you might
Hmm.
witness it happen. So you're like, it's one of those things where it's like you know that this is something that does happen. Maybe you even witnessed it happen. Probably have witnessed it. Job had a lot of flocks and herds and all this other stuff. He's probably witnessed animals giving birth to other animals. But then God's like, yeah, there's no animals giving birth that I don't know about.
Yeah.
Now compare that to like what you know, and you'll see like the huge chasm between our knowledge.
Yeah, and even when you think you're going to be there, say you own cattle or horses or dogs, whatever, and you know that the mother's about to give birth, doesn't mean that it's going to work out for you to actually see that. I'm thinking of a story that my dad would tell me. My dad raised horses, and he had a mare that was about to foal, and he wanted to be there just in case something went wrong. So he like stayed all night out at the barns waiting for the mare to finally have the foal. And she's pacing. You could tell she's ready, but she's not. She's not. She's not. And finally, he like, I'm gonna run to town to get some breakfast and come right back out. So when he gets back to the barn, she's had the colt. It's like she waited for him to leave, and then she's like, okay, now I'm ready. So even our human plans, I'm going to be there, when my dog has puppies or when the cow has the calf or the horse has the foal. It doesn't always work out, but God's there. He knows all these things.
Yeah.
Nothing is going to bypass his knowledge.
Yeah, he's not just aware of every uh, mountain goat that gives birth, but he knows when they're going to give birth. Like, he's not
Yeah.
like, it looks like it's going to happen now. I'll get over there. He knows well in advance exactly the moment that's going to happen.
Yes. So moving next to the wild donkey. So this is 5 through 8. Who has let the wild donkey go free? Who has loosed the bonds of the swift donkey? I don't really think I use not an adjective I would ordinarily place with donkey, swift donkey, but it's what God says. Who has loosed the bonds of the swift donkey? To whom I have given the arid plain for his home and the salt land for his dwelling place. He scorns the tumult of the city. He hears not the shouts of the driver. He ranges the mountains as his pasture, and he searches after every green thing. So this wild donkey, you'll see references to this animal actually quite a few places in the Old Testament. It talk about it's looking for food, or it's sometimes it's speed. Uh, it's independence, like it avoids human society. In fact, I think this was kind of proverbial in some of the ancient Near Eastern literature about roaming the desert like a wild donkey. So that's kind of what they were known for doing. So here, I mean, you don't have again emphasis on the young, but you do have this idea of the wild donkey being liberated by God, right? And given a home, basically in the middle of nowhere, right? He's got the arid plain as his home, dwells in this salt land because verse 7, he scorns the tumult of the city. He hears not the shouts of the driver. So unlike domesticated animals, the domesticated donkey, who is going to hear the shouts of the driver if it's pulling something, maybe it's going to be in a city, but not the wild donkey. And this is emphasized because, of course, if you have a domesticated donkey, then yeah, you're going to know a lot more about it, and you're going to have it close to you. Maybe not in the city, but wherever you live. But not this animal. This animal is one of God's animals that He's made and given its own place. And even though it's the middle of nowhere, no man's land, then God's there, and He knows exactly where this animal goes every morning, where it lays down every evening, because well, that's who He is. This is His creation.
Yeah, the idea is that not every wild donkey is like an escaped domesticated donkey. They
Right.
they were out there. Like, in fact, the opposite is true. Like, um, domesticated donkeys like came from people going out there and capturing some wild donkeys, and then they might have young and they might sell them and all this kind of stuff. But like, who was putting the first donkeys out there? It wasn't you. It wasn't like you guys all got together and decided to let some donkeys go free.
These aren't feral donkeys.
No.
Yeah, so we got what we got three animals, four animals so far, right? We got the lion, we got the raven, we got the mountain goats, and we got the wild donkeys. Now we come to the wild ox, which in Hebrew is the re'em. Is the This is 9 through 12. Is the wild ox willing to serve you? Will he spend the night at your manger? Can you bind him in the furrow with ropes, or will he harrow the valleys after you? Will you depend on him because his strength is great? Will you leave him to your labor? Do you have faith in him that he will return your grain and gather it to your threshing floor? So actually, this is a good pairing because we just talked about the wild donkey, and now we're talking about the wild ox, and pretty frequently in the Old Testament, you'll have the domesticated ox and the domesticated donkey used together, paired together to talk about whatever it might be. And so here in Job, you have that same pairing, except these are not the domesticated variety. This is the wild donkey, and this is the wild ox. So most scholars that I've looked at on this will identify this as the aurochs. I hope I'm saying that right. Aurochs. And this was evidently, I mean, you can look up pictures of this online, just enormous animal. So one commentary I was looking at said that it was exceeded in size. It was most powerful of all hoofed beasts, this guy says, exceeded in size only by the hippopotamus and the elephant. So this isn't you picture a cow or a bull or an ox in the field. So take that and double it. This is a big animal. And if this identification is right, then the last one became extinct in 1627. So this was this animal is mentioned pretty frequently in the Old Testament as just symbols of strength or sometimes of danger. And here, it's just it's kind of like the wild donkey, except here he's talking about how are you gonna like put a yoke on this animal? Like use him to plow your fields and gather in your grain. Well, of course you're not going to, because he's not the kind of animal that you do that with. That's not the way that I made him to be.
Yeah, it seems like a tough animal to tame.
Yeah,
It seems
yeah.
like
This
he
is not gonna.
seems like he can resist.
Yeah. This, by the way, this is just kind of uh, a trivial detail, but interesting nonetheless. So if you happen to be one of those that likes the King James version, and you look up Job 39 verse 9, it translates this as unicorn.
Right. There you go.
Yeah. So yeah. And they actually got that from the Greek translation, the Septuagint, which translated this animal as the monoceros, which means one horned, or of course, unicorn. So slight misidentification back when
Well,
that was translated.
you know the scientific name for the rhinoceros is the bicorn, which is
Oh, I did not know that.
yeah, yeah. So the scientific name for
Oh,
rhinoceros is a bicorn. Bi is in more than one,
yeah, two,
right?
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
and so that where you get unicorn from is one, and then rhinoceros is two, and perhaps you had some confusion there when you're
Yeah, probably so. Yeah. Uh, it, Speaking of names of animals, I always thought it was funny that hippopotamus, literally from its word origins, means water horse, which is not would never think of hippopotamus as like, oh yeah, look, it's a water horse. Water, yeah, but the horse, no. Hippopotami, don't resemble horses. But anyway, that's the origin of that name.
I was actually on a rec league basketball team called the Fighting Bicorns, and they
Ooh.
we had this logo which was like a rhinoceros like dunking a basketball, and like nobody knew. Everyone was just like, "What is it going on?" So
What?
that's how I know that.
That's pretty what a great mascot. Uh all right, so yeah, that's we got the wild oxen here. Now, we go from the this great magnificent beast that is now extinct to a humorous animal, the ostrich, which I think is like one of the strangest animals that God has made. And this section about the ostrich is just it's actually I think designed to be humorous. So
I mean,
verse 13,
we've had the companion of ostriches come up,
we have, that's right. Yeah,
yeah,
companion of ostriches.
and so
Yeah.
that it does seem like the ostrich is like this sort of animal that is not like ridiculed, but like there's not a lot of esteem for the ostrich, and you can kind of tell why. Where you're like, what is going on with this bird? I mean, this bird can't fly. This bird sticking its head in the sand or
In the sand.
whatever, and like it's just the ostrich seems like a part of God's creation where He was like maybe being a little playful. Perhaps the platypus is like that too, where you're just like, "What are you doing, man? Like that? Were you just kind of having fun and just making this thing?"
It
And
makes you wonder, yeah.
because it seems like when Job says he's the companion of ostriches, like it seems like he's saying like that this is a laughable thing, right? Like this is
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
it's obviously not a positive thing.
No, it's almost like now that you brought that up, maybe it means like I'm a companion of fools.
Yeah,
Everybody around me is just laughable, and not really in a good humor sort of way,
yeah,
but
because the ostrich
just kind of
seems The
ridiculous.
ostrich seems foolish. You're like, well, what does this thing do? Right? Like what is this
Right.
thing? What is it contributing exactly?
Yeah. Well, evidently they well let me read it, then I'll go from there. So this is 13 to 16. The wings of the ostrich wave proudly, I guess.
For no reason.
Yeah, and I like their flying. But are they the pinions and plumage of love? For she leaves her eggs to the earth and lets them be warmed on the ground, forgetting, and here you have the foolishness part, forgetting that a foot may crush them, and that the wild beast may trample them. She deals cruelly with her young, as if they were not hers. Though her labor be in vain, yet she has no fear. And then you almost have a why? Why is that? And verse 17 tells us, because God has made her forget wisdom
Man, the
and
ostrich.
given,
Ostrich is too dumb to be afraid.
yeah, and he's given her no share in understanding. When she rouses herself to flee, she laughs at the horse and his rider. So Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of a humorous depiction of this ostrich proudly waving her wing, even though, of course, she can't fly. And then because God has given her no share in wisdom or understanding, she just lays her eggs are in the ground and it's like, yeah, whatever. Walks away. They get crushed. They get crushed. I don't. I'm not even wise enough to be concerned about what might happen to them.
Yeah, when the young, if they do hatch and the young come out, she's like, "Who are you?"
Where'd you come from? So get this. That last part about when she rouses herself to flee, she laughs at the horse and his rider. That's because, man, these things are fast. So maybe there's an ostrich expert out there listening to 40 Minutes in the Old Testament who's probably going to contact us and tell us you know,
We don't
we
understand
have
the
not
we don't
presented the
understand
correct scientific facts.
the
Yeah, the
glory of the
glory of the
ostrich.
of the ostrich. But get this, the reason she laughs at the horse and his rider is because she can outrun them. So this is from a National Zoo website. I just copied this morning. It says that no birds can match their speed on land. They're the fastest running birds in the world. Scientists have seen ostriches run continuously at speeds of 30 to 37 miles per hour and sprint up to 43 miles per hour. And they can have like a 10 cover 10 to 15 feet in a single stride.
Yeah, well, I
That's
saw. It's funny.
pretty impressive.
I just saw a video shot by a mutual friend of ours who was out in Africa, and they were in these like jeeps. You know, they're like in the out in the middle of the desert or wherever they are, so they can't
Yeah.
drive like super fast, but they're driving pretty fast, and they're chasing the ostriches, and they can't catch them. I mean,
Good
they're running
grief.
crazy fast.
That's wild. Yeah, I had no idea until I just, yeah, out of curiosity, more or less, was looking that up that they could, I mean, 40 miles an hour?
Yeah,
Good grief, that's crazy. So, yeah, they can run fast.
but it makes you wonder
They
why
can,
they're proudly spreading their wings, though.
it does.
Show off those legs, man. You got some
Yeah, yeah,
good legs there. I don't know about those wings aren't
yeah.
doing a lot for you.
Show those legs. But yeah, I don't think the wings are anything to be that proud of. I mean, maybe they think they look cool, but they're not going to get you off the ground.
Yeah, it does seem like this does. I don't know. Maybe this helps make a little bit of sense of the companion of ostriches because yeah, the ostrich does seem just a little dumb and naive and foolish, but it's
Mhm.
fast.
But it is fast. Hey, it has that going for it for sure.
It's almost
All
like
right, so
it's almost like God is saying, "Hey, explain the ostrich to me." And of course, no one can. They're just like, "I have no idea what's up with the ostrich." And God's like, "I do."
this was the part that really stumped Job. He's like, "Oh man, I thought maybe I could say something about wild donkeys, but the ostrich,
I
I'm
got I
clueless."
got
Yeah,
nothing.
I got nothing on that one. All right, so then he shifts in verse 19 to I think one of the just more kind of beautiful poetic sections of this whole all the animals he talks about. Maybe it's just because I love horses, but this is a great section. This is 19. He says more about the horse than most of these other ones. This goes 19 through 25. Did you give Job? Did you give the horse his might? Do you clothe his neck with a mane? Do you make him leap like the locust? His majestic snorting is terrifying. He paws in the valley and exults in his strength. He goes out to meet the weapons. He laughs at fear. There's a lot of animals laughing in this section. The ostrich was laughing, horse is laughing. He laughs at fear and is not dismayed. He does not turn back from the sword. Upon him rattle the quiver, the flashing spear, and the javelin. With fierceness and rage, he swallows the ground. He cannot stand still at the sound of the trumpet. When the trumpet sounds, he says, Aha! He smells the battle from afar, the thunder of the captains, and the shouting. I love that one line. Where'd my book go? I was going to show you this book that I have here. I must have put it up. Oh, here it is. So I know you guys can't see this, but I can show it to Dan at least. It's called the book title is Ha Ha Among the Trumpets. It's taken from the old translation of verse 25. The ESV has when the trumpet sounds, he says, Aha. But the old King James was when the trumpet sounds, he's like, ha ha, among the trumpets. This is a collection of sermons by Martin Franzmann, he was a hymn writer and professor at Concordia Seminary in St. Louis many years ago. He's a great writer. But this that opening sermon was preached at a seminary graduation, and the title was "Ha Ha Among the Trumpets," and he used that text from Job to talk about how basically, like this war horse is is doing what God created it to do. He's in the middle of the battle. He's ready to go, and he's like laughing. He's just exulting in the fact that God has put him where he's at, so that he can do what he does. And Franzman used that verse to talk about how whatever your vocation is, he of course was speaking specifically there to pastors. You do it kind of with gusto, and when the trumpet sounds, you don't draw back in fear, but you're like ha ha among the trumpets. So pretty cool use of that verse from Job. But I mean, this is quite a description of the war horse. When I was reading it, just you get this picture in your mind of he's not just got the saddle, but he's got all the accoutrements of warfare. He's got the warrior on his back, ready to go to war, and the horse is just like almost like a wild beast, just tearing up the ground, and he's ready to go. He's ready to charge into battle, and that's why I mentioned a few minutes ago that even though most of these animals, or all these animals up to this point, are are wild animals, the inclusion here of the horse, which of course is domesticated, fits because the description that we have that God gives of this animal sounds more like a wild beast
Yeah.
than your typical horse. Like if you go on a trail ride, you go to some dude ranch and they put you on the back of a horse. That horse is not going to be like the horse in Job 39. He's just going to plod along, and you're not going to get bucked off. Nothing's going to startle this horse. And the war horse is very much the opposite.
Yeah, there's such a contrast too when you go from the ostrich to this war horse, and maybe they're both fast, I guess, but except for that, they're very very different, and God is obviously saying like, yeah, I made both of them that way.
Yeah. I made one to be kind of silly, naive. I made the other one to be powerful and majestic. And the ostrich may run fast. Yeah, got a pretty good speed there. But there's nothing to compare it with when it comes to the vigor and the kind of the zeal of the war horse when the battle trumpet sounds. All right, so we got one more section here at the end of 39, and we're going to hear about the hawk and the eagle here. So once more, God is saying to Job, "Is it by your understanding that the hawk soars and spreads his wings toward the south? Is it at your command that the eagle mounts up and makes his nest on high? On the rock he dwells and makes his home, on the rocky crag and stronghold. From there he spies out the prey. His eyes behold it from far away. His young ones suck up blood, and where the slain are, there is he." Reminds me of that line from the Gospels. Where the carcass is, there the vultures will gather. Where the slain are, there is he. So we go from one bird, a very strange bird, to a horse, and now to some bit more majestic birds, the hawk and the eagle. And the emphasis here, of course, is, did you give understanding to these birds that allow them to soar through the heavens? Was it that you command that the eagles mount up and make their nest on these rocky crags and strongholds? Did you, O Job, give them eyes that have this just very impressive vision that's able to see from afar and to spy out their prey and to swoop down and get that prey and then take it back to their young? Of course, no, you did not, but I did. I'm the one who did all of this, and therefore I am the one who has not only the power but the understanding to create all these things.
Yeah, dude. If you, I mean, to me anyway, like if you are, I don't know, out hiking or something, and you see like a hawk or or eagles soaring, it is pretty wild because it's not like they're vigorously flapping or something like that. It looks like they're floating, like they're just like gliding, right?
Yeah.
If you've ever seen one, like an eagle or swoop down on a lake and like snatch a fish out and that kind of stuff, it is wild. Uh, you almost wonder, like, as we try to figure out how to fly, and then invent airplanes and stuff. I mean, we just copy and pasted this from things that God had already created, right? I mean, without a
Yeah.
doubt, when we decided how could we do that, we looked at hawks and eagles and said, well, it's got to look like that.
Yeah. That's what we can. I guess we have to have wings on this flying object.
Yeah.
The Wright brothers said, it's got to have something that's going to resemble the birds. Otherwise, this is never going to work. Yeah. So we're imitative creatures, and so even in our creation, we're going to make sure that we're copying the animal world. I'm just watching. I think it's just this morning. I saw this video. I think it was a falcon, and somebody captured this video, but it was way up in the air, and it was very windy. So because you could see, its feathers and its wings were being affected by these wind gusts, and its head was pointed downward, and its whole body was like moving as you would expect it to in the wind, but its head was just still as could be. You could tell it was like focused on what it was about to dive and catch. And watching, I was like, man, that's just amazing that they're able to do what they do. But there you have understanding that God has given to these creatures.
And then God has to get real graphic and say, hey, the young ones are going to suck up that blood.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he's down to the nitty gritty. So I think we can finish out this because I would take so we're at the end of 40. Um, let's see. At least we can begin to see how God kind of ends this before he begins his next speech. He says to Job, after all of this, after all these animals, he says, "Shall a fault finder contend with the Almighty? He who argues with God, let him answer it." So this is the way that God finishes his speech to Job. So shall a fault finder, of course, pointing here to Job, are you going to be able to contend with the one who does all of these things, who in his might and his understanding and his wisdom and his skill has created the world that I've just described to you, all these kinds of animals, and knows them backwards and forwards, inside and out. So if you can do that as you are arguing with God, then give me an answer. So that's the way that God speaks to Job. I think kind of summing all this up.
Oh, isn't it
Now here's
interesting?
Job's.
It is interesting that God would say all this stuff and uh, says something about God that God doesn't just say, put that in your pipe and smoke it, Job, and walk off or whatever, but actually does then pause and lets Job respond. He's going to give Job what he's been asking for. Say, okay, so you think you found some fault? You're going to contend with me? Give me
Yeah.
your answer. Let's do it. And then Job doesn't have a lot of things to say after all that,
No.
but God does give
No.
him the opportunity to say whatever it is he wants to say.
Yeah, it's right. He does invite a response, which of course it has been the whole point of this. God isn't just here to shut Job down. You know, he could have done that very easily. He could have just shown up in the whirlwind and said, "Job, shut up. I don't want to hear anything from you." But he doesn't. I mean, this is as much as this is a long divine speech, it's also a conversation. Now, Job's answer, and we'll wrap up here, is interesting. This is Job 40, verse 3 and 3 through 5. Then Job answered the Lord and said, "Behold, I am of small account." This is sometimes translated a bit more negatively, like vile or unworthy. But the Hebrew there is just kind of insignificant. Is a good way to translate this. I'm insignificant. I'm small. I'm little. So what shall I answer you? I lay my hand on my mouth, which is an honorable gesture of like I've got nothing else to say. It's not sometimes when we picture someone putting their hand on the mouth, it's like, shock or something like that. But this is like a Hebrew expression that means I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop talking. We we would say I'm going to zip my lips, right? I lay my hand on my mouth. Then Job finishes up by saying, I've spoken once and I will not answer. Twice, but I will proceed no further. Now, I don't know if I'm right on this, but the way this reads to me is that Job is yeah, he's admitting in his humility, listen, I'm nothing. So I've got no answer for you. I'm going to put my hand in my mouth, and basically, it's almost like I've already said my piece. I've said what I had to say, and I've got nothing more to speak, at least at this point. And maybe that's the reason that we have a second speech coming from God, and Job will have more to say after that speech. But at this point, Job is putting his hand in his mouth, and he's like, "Well, I'm insignificant, and I really don't have anything more that I can say to you."
Yeah. Yeah, and that is it,
So,
man. We will.
That's all we got to say too.
That's it.
Yeah.
We will leave it there. The Lord is going to say some more stuff to Job after that short response, and we'll get into that next episode. Chad, I'll see you then.
See you then.